has more than 35 of research experience and more than 130 research articles in well-reputed journals. Dr. Subramaniam is a fellow of National Academy of Medical Science and having number of prestigious awards. So today, Dr. Subramaniam will deliver the talk on disease related to disturbance in the secondary signals pathway in immune metabolism. So now I would like to invite Dr. Subramaniam for deliver the interesting talk. So now over to Dr. Subramaniam, please.
Thank you, Dr. Pathak. My slides are there. You can see the slides.
Yeah, please continue.
I have to zoom it or it's okay?
No, best to go for the screen slideshow. Yeah.
This okay, no?
Yeah, click that slideshow.
Right.
No, click that slideshow, sir. The screen. The screen picture. Yes.
It's okay?
Yeah, it's good. Please go ahead, Karen.
Okay, I thank Dr. Chandrasekhar and the SAT team for giving this opportunity. It's good actually. I'm going to complete this talk before lunch because postprandial phase is the actually toughest part actually, which increases the inflammation load endogenously. So if I give some exogenous load, there should not be endogenous load of inflammation. So I want to complete as early as possible. So there is a blessing in disguise. Amidst COVID-19 crisis, today buzzwords among the general public, irrespective of socioeconomic status, is infection, inflammation, immunity. More recognition on inflammation and hence more visibility of our society. Therefore, never than before, more weightage and more responsibility for us to nurture and foster inflammation research. I thank the SAT team for this excellent the basic inflammation and immunology course. If you look at this figure, there is a cardinal signs of inflammation. This cartoon depicts the 5 Greeks representing the cardinal signs of inflammation: heat, redness, swelling, pain, and loss of function, which are as appropriate today as they were when first described by Celsus more than 2000 years ago. If you look at actually many diseases, particularly the non-communicable disease, one way or other way, they are connected to inflammation. And particularly when you talk about obesity, diabetes, CVD, cancer, neurodegeneration, COPD, and all these things, there are actually disharmonious, the inflammatory signalings occur in liver, adipose tissue, pancreas, brain. They all actually, overloaded with the nutrient energy stress, meta-inflammation, and immunometabolic dysfunction. They may actually accelerate aging and premature mortality and death. So initially, you can see the different, signaling already. Actually, a lot of the speakers covered this action signaling across the autocrine, the paracrine, and the endocrine signaling. And if you look at the signaling cascade, it looks like linear. A relay chain or signaling cascade is set into motion, transfer signal to appropriate cell machinery, transform into recognizable form, amplify the signal, distribution and divergence to a number of intracellular targets, modulation if necessary. But it is not linear. If you can look at actually the other slide, most of the signaling transfection signaling pathways are like horror graph. Whether it is an insulin secretion cascade that is occurring in the pancreatic beta cell or the insulin action that is happening in the skeletal muscle, you can see a lot of signals actually concerted way actually coordinating either insulin secretion at the pancreatic cell or proper glucose uptake into the skeletal muscle. But wherever you can see actually a star, there is a drug discovery potential, and inflammation is one or other way connected to all these cascades, causing in pathophysiology of diabetes and diabetes complications. See, if you look at the T cell activation, as a few actually signals are important. Calcium activates calcineurin, and it gets phosphorylate NFAT. NFAT gets into the nucleus, and then you will get actually a proper IL-2 gene expression. This is physiology. But the same signals, calcium, calcineurin, NFAT, and other actually signals can also participate in pathophysiology. See, they are hypertrophic stimuli. The same signals, calcium, calcineurin, NFAT, and you get actually cardiac-specific gene expression. What about in the neovascularization that is occurring in retinal diabetic retinopathy or retinal neovascularization? Again, VGF is the stimuli here. You can see here calcineurin, calcineurin, NFAT, and then gene expression that is propelling into cell proliferation, uncontrolled proliferation in the eye. So it looks like that the same signals, depending on the microenvironment and the nature and the context, they can involve in physiology, they can involve in pathophysiology. And this slide shows the inflammation of is connected by many factors, starting from actually the demographic factors, clinical factors, and a lot of new biology information. And this is a slide actually, somebody is actually calling to, talking to other person. My friend, you must be lucky. You know every single specialty doctor in the city. You must be healthy. The other person actually replies like this. Hi, you are absolutely wrong. At the age of 40, I have all kinds of health problems. First, I got diabetes. It brought me all of its companions. Have a long waiting list to see specialists in the next 3 to 6 months. Even in sleep, I see only lab reports, scans, x-rays, colorful tablets and capsules, diet advice and exercise threat, and loads of medical bills, prepaid and postpaid. Recently, I met a disease biologist. He says, my biological age, although my chronological age is 40, my biological age is 50 plus, and I must be running through inflammaging. So this is what actually the connecting, inflammation story with a lot of signaling pathways occurring in the age and age-related diseases. So long been actually, we shown actually a lot of, the inflammatory related factors are actually getting dysfunctional in diabetes and diabetes complication. And we have also shown that actually connection between inflammation and oxidative stress, glycation stress, and then there is also role of autophagy. Mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell, is under stress. Endoplasmic reticulum, which is the protein quality control machinery of the cell, is under stress. That is the ER stress. And there is also role for ubiquitin proteasomal system. And somehow, actually, all these secondary signaling pathways are connected to inflammation, and they do actually play a role in pathophysiology of non-communicable diseases. So in the year 2013, we showed that LPS activity and LPS levels are actually increased in diabetes, and the zonulin, similarly the clustrin, zonulin, or the integrated membrane, the membrane integrity is actually damaged. They get into the circulation. We showed that actually zonulin also increased in type 2 diabetes patient serum. And that has a lot of correlation to TNF-alpha, IL-6, and it's negatively correlated to HDL also. So we provided the evidence like that there is a bacterial connection to diabetes. As a lot of the other speakers, including Dr. Giri spoken, there are a lot of interactions. And the last speaker actually Avasthi told about this IL-9. So probably IL-9 might have actually a role here, but we have to explore it. And similarly, the TLR signaling has been very well worked out. What about NOD, that is nucleotide oligomerization domain expression signaling in type 2 diabetes? So this is the first study. We showed that there is increased NOD1, NOD2 in type 2 diabetes compared to normal control subjects and pre-diabetic subjects. So I wrote an article actually, too much of nodding in diabetes and what triggers inflammation in diabetes. Apart from TLR, this NOD signaling is also very important, and it has some bacterial connection also, because the peptidoglycans, which are the part of the actually bacteria, they also actually get into this kind of NOD signaling activation in diabetes and its complications. And long been actually, we have been showing actually the plasma TNF alpha and IL-6 is increased in diabetes, pre-diabetes, and many other actually systemic diseases. And we have also showed that actually NF-kappa B is increased. And in the year 2006, I read an article, NF-kappa B is increased, that may increase microRNA 146A. So with that, actually, I asked one of my students to actually look at MIR 146A in people with diabetes and compared to the control. To our surprise, there is actually impairment of MIR 146A and its target genes, that is TRAP6 and also IRAK1 are getting increased in type 2 diabetes, NF-kappa is increased, systemic levels of inflammation increase. That means actually under the condition of plasma TNF alpha, plasma IL-6 increase, there is an impaired 146A, and this has been quoted in Nature India's RNA clue to inflammation. Once we published almost actually 8-9 years back, we have been actually working on this now very seriously, how we can manipulate 146 as a drug target. And we have also showed that actually 146A impairment is connected to ER stress and also inflammatory markers. This has been again published in the Journal of Leukocyte Biology as altered immunometabolism at the interface of increased endoplasmic reticulum stress in patients with type 2 diabetes. Probably apart from the anti-inflammatory agents, there is also a role for chemical chaperones as a new generation class of anti-diabetic agents, anti-inflammatory agents that should improve ER folding capacity, help to stabilize protein conformation and ameliorate ER stress and also inflammation. We have also shown that there is an augmentation of histone deacetylase 3 epigenetic signature at the interface of pro-inflammation and insulin resistance in patients with type 2 diabetes. And when HDAC3 or HDAC3, the other, the related mechanisms are activated, and there is more inflammation that is connected to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, and it is also actually coming as an important epigenetic drug. And there is also evolutionary consensus in the, if you can see that evolution, there is an, even from the starting from Drosophila, you can see the adipose, immune, blood cells, and liver, they are all actually represented by fat body. And even you can see the toll-like receptors actually, and then this is the insulin receptor, and this is actually a counterpart of TNF or TNF receptor in the Drosophila. And the lean human, you can see that actually how adaptation is giving to all these signals in a good, healthy way. And when people become obese, they all get actually hypertrophy signals and then inflammation, ectopic lipid accumulation, especially in skeletal muscle and other, tissues, and the several actually maladaptation occurs at the signaling. And evolutionarily, these pathways are converged. And if you can see that actually the metabolic healthy obese people, there are actually some good actually the adipocyte regulation and the inflammatory regulation is happening. When you talk about metabolic obese, but normal weight people, they have a lot of actually, the harmful effects. And similarly, metabolic unhealthy obese, there is a lot of actually inflammatory signals are connected to adipocyte and immune crosstalk. So what we have done is actually, we have shown convergence of adipocyte hypertrophy, telomere shortening, and hypoadiponectinemia in obese subjects and patients with type 2 diabetes. Even in control subjects, this is the control subject and this is the diabetic subject fat biopsy. And if you can see the adipocyte size compared to the same BMI control versus diabetes, diabetic cells are hypertrophic. They secrete more pro-inflammatory factors, they secrete less adiponectin, their telomere length is actually shortened. So that is why, when we wrote this article as a press release, we put why lean diabetic could be metabolically obese. In India, although obesity is increasing, there is a concern that actually even lean people with diabetes, they are metabolically obese and they have a lot of actually inflammation, chronic inflammation related thing. This is to be actually clinically taken care. And there is a VCS cycle. So very closely, Tamil Nadu and other states are going to actually face the election. The election is the time actually a lot of disharmonious alliance occurs. Similarly, there is a disharmonious alliance between the vascular inflammation, oxidative stress, endothelial dysfunction that is going to actually, create a lot of vascular remodeling at the macrovascular complication, leading to artificial stiffening, fibrosis, elastin fragmentation, calcification, and similarly microvascular dysfunction such as cognitive dysfunction, microangiopathy, and they all lead to accelerated vascular aging and diabetes complications. Here again, you can see that, the multiple steps in the cancer, liver cancer, central role of inflammation. You can see here the HBV and HCV infection, alcohol consumption, NFLD and NASH, aflatoxin, bacteria, type 2 diabetes, obesity, these are the risk factors. But once actually this normal liver is progressing to fibrosis or cirrhosis liver, you can see the enormous number of the chemokines and inflammatory cytokines are involved, and that progress to liver cancer, interacting with the hepatocarcinogenic pathways, including PA3, AKT, MTO, and other JAK-STAT, EGPR pathways, which some of the actually other speakers also talked about how they are all actually integrating, and this disharmonious alliance is leading to end-stage complications, liver and other organs. Even actually there is role for endocrine disruptor chemicals. Recently, we have shown that the serum levels of bisphenol A is increased in type 2 diabetes. It is more so in the woman also. Probably might be actually coming through cosmetics or other actually lifestyle factors. And these bisphenol A, recently there is a receptor for bisphenol A has been identified, which is estrogen-related receptor gamma. It's a specific receptor for BPA, and BPA can actually interact with the estrogen-related receptor gamma or actually other PPR gamma, toll-like receptors, NOD-like receptors. And there are a lot of actually interconnection between gut microbiota, dysbiosis, mitochondrial dysfunction, ER stress, and circadian disruption. They're all getting to actually complicate many organ systems, and thereby you see metabolic disorders, type 2 diabetes, obesity, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, cardiovascular abnormalities. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, now it is termed actually a different term because of the inflammation and metabolism related alterations. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is called as NAFLD, is now called as MAFLD, that is metabolism associated fatty liver disease. And this needs to be studied at the clinical scenario. So the targeting inflammatory system as an anti-inflammatory strategy is also getting a lot of interest. DMF, metformin, methotrexate, rapamycin, and a lot of small molecules are getting actually manufactured and tested at very different phases of the clinical trial. Metformin is actually one of my favorite. I wrote an article, Metformin, the nature's gift that keeps on giving more. Why I call this nature gift is, it is synthesized from a French lilac flower. The botanical name is Gallica officinalis, and metformin is 50 years old. And apart from its anti-diabetic agent, it has been repurposed for many other diseases. And metformin is also actually good for COVID. It has been actually proven now. And metformin repurposing is very important for anti-inflammatory actions. So one good thing is actually many things are actually worked out actually pharmacological way, and non-pharmacological lifestyle modification. Exercise has been shown to actually decrease a lot of actually the inflammatory parameters. They increase a lot of actually beneficial parameters, and aerobic exercise training has been shown to actually decrease energy supply, inflammation, fat mass, and increase energy expenditure, AMPK, and adrenaline, IL-6 acutely. Sometimes IL-6 acute increase is beneficial at the skeletal muscle level. So there are research questions. Is inflammation is villain or victim? How to differentiate physiological inflammation, pathological inflammation? This is a big clinical enigma or clinical paradox to a lot of clinicians. How to differentiate inflammation guaranteed versus inflammation unwarranted? development of universally standardized information biomarker assays of utility that is very, very important, because we have actually profiled 450 Indians and 450 Danish people on a same Indo-Danish gut microbiome project very recently. The results showed that we conducted actually the same mission, all the multiplex-based inflammatory biomarkers, 450 subjects, individuals from India, 450 individuals from Denmark, and we showed that actually a lot of differences in the clinical parameter. The high clinical the inflammatory biomarkers which are seen in diabetes, they are already seen in pre-diabetes and even in the control, the titles of control people in India like that. So the cutoffs and other things has to be actually clinically prospective studies. We need to know on ethnic population in India, then only we can have actually a information biomarker can be used with clinical utility. Okay, with that, I close this my talk. Thank you. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Dr. Subramaniam, please stop the sharing slide. So thank you, Dr. Subramaniam, very nice talk. So
Thank you.
this one is open for discussion.
Yeah, I mean, as Dr. Subramaniam has said, that one of the major clinical complexities, which I was also putting across to Dr. Awasthi and others, is where I should take a cutoff with reference to inflammation. When the inflammation has been triggered, either because of infection, autoimmunity, or as a self-defense, or as a repairing processes, where, how, and what's a point where we can take cutoff? Any clues, any suggestions further, Dr. Subramaniam?
That's a clinical enigma actually. See, we all know that actually, where to start, anti-diabetic drug, anti-hypertensive drug, all actually, we have clinical guidelines, national, international, everything. Here, inflammation actually, when to start actually the anti-inflammatory agents, what kind of agents, whether it should be a inhibit or modulate, all these questions are still actually research questions. And I think actually there are a lot of actually new areas are getting like, where this inflammation comes. See, we all now actually measuring systemic levels of TNF alpha, IL-6 kind of thing. Probably if we can look at these molecules, inflammatory molecules in the exosomes, and now the technologies are getting whether the exosomes are coming from skeletal muscle or adipocyte or liver or pancreas, and probably those information new biology insights will tell what is the pathophysiology link and where actually we can start actually some kind of preventive actually anti-inflammatory agents regimen starting, or when to actually end or actually continue kind of thing. So we need to wait.
Input from any other speakers also is welcome on this question, because this is one of the questions which we are trying to address from last 4 years, I think. We were just wondering on what are all the things which we can club together.
I'm absolutely agree with you, Dr. Chandrasekhar. It really is. And now is the era of the inflammation research. We have to find out such questions.
I think Dr. Giri has some comment.
Yeah, I think when it comes to inflammation, as long as we are not calling them the antigen is specific, I think managing with the pan immunosuppression will work out. But the moment we talk about antigen is specific inflammation, that's where we can start thinking of that pan immunosuppression is not going to be a good idea. So, but to figure out that who is and where is the antigen specific signal is coming in, I think that's a challenge. And we need to break that challenge. And once we have that, probably we'll have a clue that when to have complete immunosuppression versus when to have just antigen specific immunosuppression.
I think hunger might be catching up. Yeah.
So we have 2 questions from the audience. can you provide more insight into gut-brain axis concept as therapeutic approach in modern day clinical research?
Okay, so this question is directed to me, looks like.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
you're right,
not
you're right.
put a specific thing, but
Okay, all right.
Maheshwari
So,
Farida is the one who asked this question.
right, that's perfectly very nice question. So if you look at the gut specific diseases, IBD, where irritable bowel syndrome, where you don't see actually the type of symptom what you see in ulcerative colitis. So the firing of neurons and the inflammatory signals in the microenvironment is totally different than what you see in ulcerative colitis. So the communication what you see in the gut with the neuron and immune system, probably in a certain diseases like irritable bowel syndrome, where cause is not very defined. I think if we pick up those areas, it will be much more relevant for immediate requirement that why actually irritable bowel syndrome has not much pathologically defined ways. I mean, like symptomatically, you can define that the person has problem with the pain and inflammation, but not much like what you see in other the ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. So I think those areas are relevant, and also look at the other neurotransmitter like serotonin. Serotonin, most 95% of the serotonin comes from the gut, another very interesting neurotransmitter. What is its contribution in the gut inflammation? I think we need to learn very carefully what it does in the gut microenvironment. How does it modulate the immune system? I think that's another area we need to see, that gut-brain axis or gut neuron axis, how it contributes to it. So there are a lot more to learn from the gut-brain axis. The area is still opening for the new research.
So the next question is from Praveen. Role of mental stress in autoimmunity.
Very good question. I think that is now well defined, that the person with the chronic stress most likely to develop one or other type of immune disease. Now question is which autoimmunity you are going to fire up. Now if you look at the way brain works, each area of the brain regulates different proximal end of the body part. Now we need to see that where actually this neuronal signals, which area is more predominantly firing from the brain, and which region is regulating. Is there any correlation? I don't know, but it has any correlation? I think we need to learn from it, so that we can see that which region controls which body part. And if there is a chronic firing of signal from a specific region, you might actually see that the target organs will be the next the inflamed organ going to be. But is it proven? I don't know, but this is just hypothesis.
The last question, what is the long-term effects of PP2A in your research?
I think it was targeted to Amit. Yes, so Amit is not here, or Amit is here? Probably Amit is gone. Amit, are you around?
I think he is lab.
No,
Okay,
yes,
so
yeah.
PP2A is again, I can just answer this question that if you look at the T cell receptor signaling, PTPN22, PP2A, some of these, when you have the phosphorylation of the molecule, some of these phosphorylases, the phosphorylases turn off those signals. And if you look at some of autoimmune diseases, some of these phosphatases are closely associated to the autoimmune diseases, like PTPN22. If you look into the arthritis, if people has found that there's a close association with the arthritis. So antigen specific response through these phosphatases, there are reports which has associations. Now, how important it is to regulate and target, I think that's another interesting area to learn from.
Thank you.
So now we over to Dr. Chandrasekhar, and I think that is a wonderful session today.
I think Dr. Biswas is here, Professor Biswas. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it's really a wonderful lecture. I mean, it was a wonderful session. I am getting a lot of feedback from all the participants who have expressed the lectures were very good and excellent. And I would also request all the delegates and participants to send the feedback, because it's not a one-time plan. It is going to be, we have subsequently 5 more. So your input will help us in designing and improvising on from what we did today, and also to open up few of the topics which you feel would be relevant and helpful for us to discuss. We would like to pick and bring in the experts with a specific focus from the Indian scientists, and wherever we have a lacuna, we are picking up from the across the globe. And one of the endeavor is to bring forward the people who are working in the field of immunology and inflammation to the mind flora, so that we can interact with them. And also all the scientists who have delivered their lectures are open for any collaboration, any associations, both from clinical sites as well as from the basic science. I think they have given and left their emails. You can always get in touch with them. And if you have any queries, questions, I think I understand we have a too short a time to respond to all their questions. And maybe there could be some technical issues for some of you to log in with the queries and questions. You can directly put it across to us or across to them. It will be responded and answered to you as much as possible. With this small brief note, I thank all the speakers. I think it was wonderful to have all of you. And I thank Microlab team for helping us in Zooming, telecasting this. I think though there was a small technical hitch in between, and it went very smooth and very nice. And I appreciate and thank the Microlab and its team, especially Vasant Iyengar and Ravi, who were a part of this team today. And I thank the entire team of Microlabs who really helped us. And I think Dr. Giri has something to say. Yeah.
Yes, fantastic. So I think it is wonderful meeting, and I also want audience to go to the society website, and if they are interested, they can actually part of the society member, and that will be interesting in a way that there will be a lot of updates coming in terms of either book or in terms of a lot of these programs. So you will be in direct touch with us. So I think those who are interested in inflammation, more learning about inflammation, can be part of our society, and they are most welcome. And the details of that will be there, I think, on the website, right?
Yeah, right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. I think we can close the session. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Good day.
Sir, can we cut?
Yeah, we can close the session. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hello.